As you know, we're live now. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. Today is definitely a great day for Wake Up YPN. And as you know, it's been a really hot market lately. And naturally, that's brought up a lot of questions and some confusion surrounding the recent NAR Clear Cooperation Policy, or CCP, as some of you already refer it to as. So this was passed last November, and today we're ready to address all of your questions with Mr. Charlie Lee. He's the senior counsel at the National Association of REALTORs. So if you have any questions as you're watching, which I'm sure you will have, go ahead and ask them in the comments, and we'll go ahead and make sure that your answers are addressed. So without further ado, good morning, Charlie, and thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, Ashley. It's great to be here and with the Iowa City Association of REALTORs. And, you know, we get to talk about one of my favorite topics, the Clear Cooperation Policy.
Sure.
Yeah.
Where are you based out of, Charlie?
I'm based in Chicago.
Oh, nice. Okay. So nowhere that we can just shame you for having great warm weather, right?
No, no, not at all. You know, Chicago weather is so unpredictable, and I've grown up here all my life, and I'm still not used to it.
Well, it's kind of sort of like here in Iowa.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, to start off, we want to just give you a quick, ask you to give us a quick explanation on what Clear Cooperation is, as well as just some background on how it came to be.
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. So just in terms of the technical information, the Clear Cooperation Policy was adopted in November, as you said, Ashley, in 2019. And then the adoption effective date was January 1 of 2020. Associations and MLSs had up until May 1st of 2020 to make sure that they had full implementation of the policy. In terms of the background of, you know, how this policy came to be, I will tell you that it helps just to kind of think about what the world looked like before the MLS. And so before the MLS, you know, you have to understand that there was no place for brokers and agents to be able to look to find property information. In fact, you know, they had to really rely on word of mouth, print advertisements. And if you were a buyer or seller, it was really luck of the draw. So if I was like moving to a new town and I wanted to find a house, I had to happen to come across maybe someone who knew someone who was selling their house in the area that I was looking for. So very inefficient. So then someone, you know, one of our members came up with the brilliant idea of inventing the MLS. And so we had associations come together and said, let's come up with a system that is going to promote efficiency, cooperation, and transparency. Well, so now bring it, you know, to current time. And at that time, you know, there was just a lot of questions that were emerging because we saw a lot of, you know, just off-market listings that were occurring. And the off-market listings or pocket listings in it of themselves are not wrong. There are legitimate uses. We know that sometimes clients will ask for them. But the concern really became about, well, are they being misused? So we saw instances where people were advertising a property as being coming soon when they were in fact a pocket listing. And so that was really frustrating for our members, for brokers, and for their clients, because they would see a sign and it would say coming soon, or they would see something on the web that said coming soon, but it was never going to enter the market. And when it did, it was already under contract. And so there was a lot of frustration about that. And that just, you know, that begged questions about, okay, whose interest is this serving? And so we started, you know, hearing and seeing commentary, you know, even from states where they were saying that, okay, we need to come up with rules where if you were going to advertise something as coming soon, it's got to enter the market. And because there's also just misrepresentation and false advertisement implications as well. And then there were questions about, okay, whose interest is this really serving? Is it serving the client's interest? Because then they are then precluding themselves from all the benefits of the MLS, or is it serving the broker, the listing broker's interest, where, you know, I think we've heard and we know that there is this expectation that it's going to be a dual agency transaction. And so then it's like, well, is that really serving the consumers that are involved? So the MLS committee, after the work of a work group that consisted of brokers and executives across the country, came up with this policy. It overwhelmingly passed from the NAR board of directors, and that is how the policy came to be. And the policy really works to promote competition. It promotes, the core tenets of the MLS. It promotes transparency to ensure that everyone who is looking for a house has an equal opportunity to being able to get that house. And as we know, especially where you're in a market and there's very low inventory, it's important that everyone is able to understand what their options are within that market, because there may not be that many. And so if you're talking about someone who is not in the know, they don't belong to a private listing network, or they're not with the right brokerage, then they're missing out on opportunities. And we believe through the MLS, it gives them fair opportunity and to be able to bid on the house of their liking. And so and then the clear cooperation policy really protects the consumer as well. It ensures that brokers are serving in the best interest of their clients. It also, if they're a realtor, that they are fulfilling their code of ethics, their duties, because again, it really begs the question: if I am a seller and I want to sell my house, I think reasonably you would think that someone would want to sell their house for the best offer. And so in order to get that, I think it's just a basic economic principle that if you get wide exposure and you get as many buyers as you can on that house, that will translate into the best offer. And so if a seller is going to opt out of that, then I think the broker needs to really explain to the seller, these are the benefits that you will forego. Not saying that that's right or wrong, but these are the benefits that you are foregoing. And so if you want to go with an office exclusive, let me know why it is that makes sense. And so if usually it's because the seller is either, a celebrity, or they're going through a very sensitive, personal situation that they don't want others, maybe knowing that they're selling the house or coming through their house or whatnot. So then, I think the broker can say, yes, you could go with the office exclusive, but you can also explain to them, hey, the MLS also has options where you can opt out of syndication sites, where the public facing sites that are out there, you can opt out of that. You can opt out of IDX so that as soon as it is put into the MLS, that it's not going to show up on all brokerage websites. And then there are other things, other mechanisms that MLSs provide so that you can protect the seller's interest in there. And so providing that explanation to the seller, having that conversation with them, really serves their interest. And so that you avoid situations where if the seller is saying, I want privacy, but then the broker decides that I'm going to go ahead and push this out on my website, or I am going to push this out onto my private network of people, and there's no control over what those people are going to do with that information, well, then I think it makes you wonder, well, are you really serving your client's best interest? And then the other thing is just that, I know that there are questions about, well, how about the time frame? So how did they land on the one business day? So originally, there was some discussion about it being 24 hours. But, I think the challenge here is when you're coming up with a national policy is that 24 hours could be challenging for some MLSs, where it's like, how do I track all these listings and have the clock running at 24 hours so that if I'm putting it at 9 a.m. versus I'm putting it in at 1 p.m., well, then that just can be a huge administrative burden. One business day made it a little bit more simple. And we had heard back from, just brokers and MLSs and said, this is probably the best, time period to implement. And so that's how we ended up with the one business day. The other thing that I just really want to quickly touch on is that while CCP is a new policy, people should also remember that these other policies, such as Listing Procedure Section 1 which says that upon the execution of the listing agreement, meaning you have all the signatures on the listing agreement, you have to submit it in the MLS within a certain time period. And so my understanding is, with your guys' MLS, it's 24 hours. Well, that is a rule that has always existed even before CCP, and that needs to be abided by. The other thing is the office exclusive policy that existed even before CCP as well. And so CCP, it recognizes office exclusives, but it is not in any way creating office exclusives. So CCP just kind of came in to really address, these situations where we saw off-market or off-MLS listings coming on and said, okay, how do we best deal with it? And this was a way to ensure that our members are able to have these conversations with their clients so that they can advise them accordingly to let them know, these are the pros and cons, these are the options, and then let's go ahead and figure out how we can best, sell your property and how to, have the buyer find the best property for themselves.
Right. Charlie, I mean, you touched on, I think, the most important aspect, which is really the law of economics. The more exposure, the greater the competition. The greater the competition for a seller, the more opportunity that they're going to get the highest price and the best conditions for their sale. But, with that being said, and that makes perfect sense, common sense, right? There has been some confusion and a little bit of questions just about how larger brokerages might have an unfair advantage over someone who might be a one man or woman shop here in town. Can you just talk a little bit about how CCP can actually benefit both those parties and their clients, regardless of how big their office is, and especially, whatever communication that they have, network, so to speak, of communicating those upcoming listings?
Definitely. So yeah, that is definitely, comments that I've been hearing from different brokerages where they are saying, well, it puts larger brokerages at an advantage over the smaller brokerages. But I think that is really predicated on the marketing strategy being based off office exclusive listings, that being the default marketing option. And so I think, it's unfortunate that some brokers are deciding to go that route, because I think the policy is really intended to have people understand the benefits of the MLS. And then there are these exceptional cases for, an office exclusive listing. So the MLS, the more listings that are in the MLS, the more competition there is. Everyone is on the level ground of being able to see what listings are available and to serve their clients accordingly. In terms of the office exclusive listings, if you are a large brokerage or a small brokerage, you have to remember that the promotion or the advertisement of the office exclusive listing has to be limited to the broker and the agents under that broker and that office. And so questions that I sometimes get is where, like, let's say a listing broker has multiple licenses and multiple offices within their market. So then there may be a misunderstanding that I am a listing broker. I've got, let's say, 3 offices with 3 different license numbers because my state allows it. I can then go ahead and share the office exclusive within those offices. And our advisement is, no, that's not true, because it has to be tied to the license that is for which the listing agreement has been signed. And so that really then, I think, limits the amount of exposure, because let's say the seller wants just privacy, well, then you can only share it within your office, because you can best ensure that privacy will be fulfilled, that need for it. And so that's the same thing for smaller brokers as well. They are also limited in that way. And they probably, because of their size, aren't going to run into those challenges that, some of the larger brokerages will. I think the simple answer is everybody has to follow the same rules. And then the hope is that everyone will advise their clients about just the benefits of listing in the MLS, because that really then gets them the best offer. And our belief is that most consumers would be better served by having their properties within the MLS, because, you know, even if you have privacy concerns, there are different options where it doesn't have to go onto the syndication sites, and it doesn't have to, you know, go onto the IDX and all these other things to provide them maybe the need for privacy or anything else.
Certainly. And I think, Charlie, just to clarify, you know, we have multiple brokerages that will have offices in Iowa City and Cedar Rapids, for example. So when you say it has to be shared within your brokerage office, if you're just a member of, or if you, let's just say, are holding your license at your Cedar Rapids office, you have to share it with just a Cedar Rapids office. It cannot be shared with your Iowa City office as well, correct? Just to clarify.
Right. Yes. So if there is just, you know, a different license number between those offices, then yes, that is the way that the policy would work.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about how CCP plays a really important role with fair housing?
Yes. And, you know, as we know that there have been a lot of questions and important discussions that we've been having about just, you know, just in equal opportunity, right? And maybe fair housing in itself. And so I think the thing with the MLS is that it allows transparency and equal opportunity. So regardless of who I am, if I am a buyer, then I should be able to go onto the MLS. And if I'm looking for 3 beds, 2 baths, and I've got the money to be able to buy the house, then I should be able to, you know, see what my options are and select the one that, you know, I guess catches my eye. So that CCP ensures that, you know, everyone has that fair housing opportunity. But the thing with fair housing that people may not know, or just need just a quick reminder about it, is that fair housing is not just about over discrimination. There's also, and you don't also have to have, you know, malice or animus in the way that you have maybe a discriminatory practice, or there's maybe a disproportionate impact on someone who is a group that's a minority. It can occur through, you know, just circumstantial evidence. So, you know, I think 3 examples is like targeted marketing. So with off MLS listings, usually it's going to be situations where there's a private listing network. Experts and researchers have said private listing networks usually consist of affluent sellers or clients, and then usually there are a very low number of minorities, if any at all. So then the question becomes, well, now you are only marketing these properties to a certain segment of the market. And that's going to beg the question, well, why is that being done? So even if you don't intend it, and it's just, you know, by chance, these are the people that are there and they all happen to be, let's just say, I don't know, just one race, well, that you are still going to get questions about fair housing. The other thing is, you know, refusal to deal. So that will also happen with the private listing. So I am only offering this house to this group of people, meaning I am then precluding groups from other protected classes for being able to see that house. Well, now I may have to answer the allegation that I am refusing to deal with people that are of these other protected classes. And then misrepresentation and false advertisement is another concern, where, you know, I am now saying to people, this house is for sale, but it's only available for a certain group of people to be able to buy. So that is where, you know, with CCP, it really is designed to, you know, make sure that the seller understands what their needs are, and then how it is that it most likely would work within the MLS. But in the event that it is not, then, you know, you can market it in a limited scope within just your office, so that you can serve the client's interest and avoid these fair housing issues. Just, you know, be careful with the fair housing issues, because these will come up more in those situations where you're dealing with like an off MLS listing.
And those are really great points, because oftentimes, you know, that's if it's not something that I'm intentionally going out to do, you don't necessarily think about how the implication exists that you're doing something to actually harm your marketing and harm your position overall.
Yeah, definitely. It's, and that's where I think people may think, well, I'm not doing this on purpose,
Mhm.
right? I
Right.
just want to sell my house or sell my client's house. And I think that, these people within this private network are the best buyers for it. Well, I think, you may not realize that from the outside looking in, it actually doesn't look that way.
Yeah.
And this even comes up with, love letters as well, where, sometimes, yeah, the seller would like to know who they're selling their house to, but then they may not realize that, there are these fair housing implications involved.
We're going to have you come back for a little segment on that, because that's a totally different Pandora that has come up
Yeah, no
in the past
doubt.
couple of weeks. As you can imagine, with this competitive market that we're dealing with right now. One of the biggest struggles for us as agents is social media and getting the word out to our network and making sure that we're following all the guidelines and the rules. So if we have a property and we want it to have something that says, about to be on the market or coming soon, is this considered a violation?
It can be. It definitely can be. So it really depends on how the marketing is, I guess, set up, right? So if it's like, let's say let's go with the easiest one, and that is you've got the address. Well, then that's triggered CCP, because now everybody knows that that property is for sale. But let's say you just show, I don't know, if you provide information where it's just minus the address, but people know what house it is that you're talking about. If it's like the only purple house in town and it's a picture of the purple house, well, I think, yes, that's public marketing. People know which house it is that you're selling. And I think you can kind of go down like the different scenarios in which I think if a reasonable person can know what house it is that you are selling, then I think you have triggered CCP, and it should be within the MLS. And it just kind of goes back like, well, why are you doing that then, right? Because then clearly privacy or public marketing is not an issue. Why is it then not in the MLS? Because you are doing that because you want to attract buyers. Well, why wouldn't you go to the place where you are going to be guaranteed the highest number of buyers that is going to serve your client's interest? Because when you do things like that, then let's say that someone sues you for breach of fiduciary duty, those are the questions you're going to have to answer.
Yeah, and that's terrifying. I mean, absolutely terrifying. So how do you protect yourself as an agent? Do you have the seller sign in office exclusive form, or are all listings to be marketed within the brokerage? I mean, what are some of the things that we can do just to make sure that we're protecting ourselves as agents, so to speak?
Yes. Document.
Okay.
Because, one, you should have an exemption form filled out by the seller. And in that form, it can list out all the benefits of listing in the MLS, so that the seller, if they decide that they're going to go the off MLS route, they can't come back and say, you didn't tell me that I was foregoing all these benefits, right? And you could say, no, this was here in the document. And the importance of documentation is because you may run into a situation where you go ahead and you sell it as a pocket listing, and the seller, I don't know, maybe something comes back and the seller realizes I could have gotten way much more for that property. And then they decide that they're going to get that difference from you. And if you don't have that documentation, well, then it's going to be very difficult for you to prove that you got the seller's authorization. And I know that you say, well, yeah, I mean, how often will that actually occur? Well, I will tell you that there was a lawsuit just recently, a very high profile lawsuit. And this was one of the facts that the court had to look at. And the court said that, well, it went to settlement, but I will say that the inclinations were that the broker was going to have a very difficult time because the broker said, we had that conversation, I talked it over with you, but when asked where that proof was, well, he didn't have it, documented.
Absolutely. We've got a couple of questions that are coming in, and one right here. So before even talking with your brokerage, you should or have to have an office exclusive listing form signed. This is a question. I think you just answered that. The answer is yes, correct?
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So what I say is at the beginning of the relationship, explain to your client, okay, first you want to know, okay, what exactly are they looking for? Most of the time you're going to have sellers say, I just want to sell my house as soon as possible and for the best price, right? I think that's going to be about for the vast majority. But let's say, for example, someone says, I don't know, I'm a celebrity and I want to keep it as private and discreet as possible. Well, then you explain to them, okay, these are the options that I can provide you in being able to serve that interest, but also understand that I have a duty to follow the applicable law, and that's going to come up with, what your state licensing laws are. And then, like fair housing is another thing. And then you also should explain to them, if I'm a realtor, that I have to obey the code of ethics, and that serves you. That's to protect you. And also there are these MLS policies and rules. And so that's going to be applicable where you explain to them, listen, so if we decide we're going to go the office exclusive listing route, then that means that I am not going to publicly market your property because I want to make sure that you get the privacy that it is that you're seeking. And so, in the event that public marketing does occur, then we are going to submit it into the MLS within 1 business day. And so the seller should then understand the parameters in which their interests are being served by you. And that way, then you avoid situations where the seller says, well, why is this happening? Why aren't we doing this or why aren't we doing that? Because then you can point back to when you had that conversation, you had that documentation, so that will really ensure that they're not going to say, you didn't tell me all of this.
Right, exactly. And it's a nice, easy paper trail for you to be able to refer back to, and also remind them that the benefits exist for them to just play by the rules and make sure that, like we've alluded to several times, they're getting the best exposure that they possibly can.
Definitely.
Another question that just came up. I see agents push the line of teasing, for instance, making a social media post about the activities of the day, and the picture makes it obvious that they're staging a house. Not surprising then, people ask questions about the project and where is the line for that? I don't know if that makes sense, but
it does. It does make sense because we get a lot of these types of questions. And so, sometimes it's hard to distinguish and demarcate, where it is that you have crossed the line. And so I think it really kind of boils down to, are they marketing the property in the way that CCP is designed to address? Or, if it's just, I am staging a house and it's very nondescript. And I don't know, maybe a few people happen to know because they know who knows, the broker or whatnot. But if for, most of the people that see that, they're not going to know what house they're talking about, then it's probably not going to trigger CCP. But if most people would know, what house it is that they're talking about, then I think that there's definitely an argument, and you can, report it to the MLS. The MLS can look into it and then decide, yes, they need to submit it to the MLS within 1 business day.
This is just a personal question coming from me, but how in the world are you policing this? And what does a CCP infraction look like? I mean, if I did something that was intentional and malicious versus doing something innocent and perhaps out of pure stupidity, are there different ramifications?
Yeah. And so, what we've been advising the MLS is, and it is really the disciplinary actions are going to be up to the MLS. That's a local discretionary decision. So NAR does not get involved in that. But I think MLS is, as for the most part, and what our advisement is that, with any new policy, you want to make sure that people understand them. And so we've provided, a lot of education, and even with the effective date to the implementation date, there was a difference of like 5 months And so that was really to give people time to understand how the policy works, and for the MLSs as well. And so I think MLSs can definitely, take the route of, we are going to give you a certain number of chances so that you know that you cannot do this. There's definitely a lot of nuances, as we've covered, just in this brief conversation. But then, MLSs will also have their fine schedules. And so that's something that all MLS participants, brokers should, ask their MLSs and say, what happens, if I happen to do this, or how many instances can happen before, this amount gets triggered and applied to me.
Sure. I have one more question here. It's a hypothetical situation. If you have a seller who wants to sell their property, but wants 1 to 2 weeks to finish up their projects and depersonalize before pictures are taken, before they publicly share in the MLS, is that, in that case, when there's a week or so lapse between the listing agreement signed and when the listing is to go into the MLS, do you need an office exclusive signed in the middle time, or is it okay to share that upcoming listing with your own office because of CCP? And then the question gets cut off a little bit, but I think you might have the gist of it, so to speak. We just need to, she's asking if there's a middle period. Should we have it signed in that time closer to when they're going to list, or when they're agreeing to work together?
Right. Yeah. So one, I think you have to remember, listing procedure section 1 also will govern here. So you need to talk to the MLS as to, what the time period is in which you have to get the listing in the MLS after the listing agreement has been executed. In terms of how to navigate between, the different, the in-between time, I would discuss that with the MLS to figure out, so that they are understanding what it is that you are trying to do for the seller. If the seller is looking for an office exclusive listing, or let's say that the property is not going to be publicly marketed, then, have that conversation with them, and it's not going to be public marketed, so it wouldn't trigger CCP. And you could still let them know, I am going to, though, in the meantime, while the property is getting ready, just so that I can let others, know that this property will be, hitting the market soon, maybe have instilled that exemption form. Because I don't think there's any downside in getting that documentation and just letting them know, for that time period, before it becomes publicly marketed, I will share it within the office, and you can have that office exclusive listing form or exemption form. So I think, there's no clear answer here, but I think documenting is definitely the right way to go.
Gotcha. Well, Charlie, I can't thank you for giving us so much of your time this morning. This has been extremely helpful. I know that we're going to have to marinate as a listener and also as an agent on all this information. And it just makes so much sense as you've communicated it. At times it feels like it's a Shark Tank out here, but when you've explained it in terms that it's just so commonsensical, it really makes it easier for me to then go ahead and explain it to my sellers out there. So I can't thank you enough for that.
Well, thank you, Ashley. It really has been a pleasure just being able to talk about this with you and with your members. And so if there are any other questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or anybody else on the MLS team. But it really has been a pleasure just being able to spend this time with you guys.
Thank you so much. And one last question, Cubs fan or Sox fan?
Sox fan all the way.
No! All right, well, they've got the best food. We've
got the best team too.
I know. I'm born in Chicago, so.
Oh, okay. I won't hold that against you.
All right, I won't either, I promise. Well, have a great rest of your week, and we thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.